Certainly mine to be here with two experts who in some ways you've made my job easy because you've given us the history, you've set the problem up, and my job, I feel, is to tell you how we will continue to try to execute that and the reasons why we will do it. As I listened to the history and all the things, it reminded me before being in Congress, one of the things that I made it very clear was I would take the district to Washington, and I would bring Washington to the district. Some might say, well, what does that really mean? Well, basically what that's saying is I won't go off to Washington and forget about the real people. The people who sent me there are our young folks, our seniors. And what we're asking for is to make sure you have a voice. So when I was on that journey going there, I also said I would come back home and make a commitment. Whether it was 10 people, 200 people, or 2,000 people, I would be honored to sit with experts or individuals who are asking questions. I'm not perfect. I might not have all the answers, but I really believe I have a responsibility to be here. Now, why Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid? Because it's something you think about. I'm at the age that I'm young enough to remember my parents and my grandparents talking about Social Security. I heard things like Medicare, Social Security, retirement, and when you were young, it's something I didn't know what it was, but I remember my mother telling me this story that I went to school one day, and they said, "Now, what do your parents do?" And I said, "Social Security and retirement," because that's all they talked about when they talked about work. So when I was fortunate enough to go to school and get a good education and go to college, one of the first things my father told me, he said, "You need to ask about the retirement system when you get a job." You know, most people, well, where's my office? What's my title going to be? And he said, you need to ask about retirement. And that's the investment that we have made, your grandmother and grandfather and your parents. So you should always know when you pay into that retirement, leave it, because one day you're going to be 60-something, and hopefully 70-something, and 80-something. And as my mother reminded me when I told her I was coming here at 90, still living by herself, and thank goodness for retirement, Social Security, and Medicare. So I come not only with a personal interest, but with a commitment, because you are my parents, grandparents, and you are our future for those who are younger. And I have a recent grandbaby, so I understand the value of all of this. Oh, so Sam, Norm, Teresa, let me give you a personal thank you for being here. You've heard a lot about a bill that's in the Senate with Senator Harkins and my good friend Linda Sanchez. So when I heard about the bill, I heard the call and the message, so I'm proud to say that you will see the name Beatty, Ohio 3, on that bill as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let me tell you why. You know, my thing is I listen to the history when people walk us through it, it seems like a natural, but it's not. And let me tell you, you have a right to be upset with Congress. And we hear that a lot. People have always said to me, why would you want to go to Congress now? This is one of the reasons. See, if you go when things are easy, there's not a lot of work to do. But when you go and people are really doing what I call planting seeds of destruction against the people who have built our foundation,
That's right.
It's an easy ask for me to go and plant a different kind of seed, a seed for the future, a seed to say thank you. And here's the thing, the same government that's messing with this system is the government who created it. And created it on a foundation that you have people who are living and looking like you and many of us in this room because we had Medicare or because we had Social Security. So that's one of the many reasons. And you talked about the COLA, or the cost of living. All of these things are so important to me. You also mentioned the CPI, the change CPI. And it's just that, think of a chain locking into something. Now, when I got there, I didn't understand this chain CPI. And it wasn't something that I was an advocate for. It was in our president's budget a year ago. And I believe he thought it was in there so he could use it as a negotiation tool, not realizing that they would take everything off the board. And more. But here's the lesson learned and the good news. Many of us wrote letters, and I'm proud to say I was one of them. And I support our president on issues, but I had to use my voice to represent the 3rd Congressional District and you. So I signed a letter asking him not to put the chains PI in, and he did. It is not in the budget this time. That's a victory.
Thank you.
And you need to understand that's a huge victory to us. So what other message do I want to bring? I want to tell you it's not about me. It's not about me coming, and while I appreciate the applaud, I was doing what I was sent to do, what I had an obligation to do. But let me tell you the real reason. I asked my staff, I said, help me along the way, because when I go and talk to audiences, I want to be able to really give them something. So give me the stories about what we're doing to make sure I can say to audiences like today, or I can stand up on the United States House floor and say, let me tell you about Harry, for example. Let me tell you about a 71-year-old gentleman in my district who in 2012 was told that he was going to get his Social Security check. And in January of 2014, he was still waiting. So when my office, and I think Veronica's here, Veronica, stand up. And Greg Beswick, stick your hand up. These two young folks who certainly are not old enough to know anything about what we're talking about. But what they do understand is service. What they do understand is they both have parents. What they do understand is that there was a grandparent along the way that helped them. So they have taken a special interest in this. And so we got involved with our congressional office. And Veronica did a lot of work in getting all of the right data and making sure that they had all the right information, because here's what we have found out. Government can make mistakes. Government can put the wrong data in, and when you put the wrong data in, you know what that outcome comes out? Wrong. Here's the good news of Harry's story. After 30 days of Veronica and Greg being relentless on this issue, Harry got a check for $39,251 on February the 20th. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, if I had car payments, if I had mortgage or rent or food or prescriptions to pay the copay, $39,000 goes a long way in anyone's household, and conversely, $39,000 puts you behind in anybody's household when those dollars were due to you. So that's another one of the reasons that I have been active, because Harry is any one of us. And I could tell you the story of Anthony, who's 78 years old, was in the hospital and got a bill that Medicare was not going to pay for his hospitalization. And you know why? A simple mistake became a costly mistake. When they entered his admission date, they put the same date as his departure date. So obviously, if you're only in the hospital for that time and getting these bills, it doesn't make sense. So again, we were able to get involved with Anthony's case, and we were able to straighten it out with Medicare, and his bill was paid. And I could tell you the story of Amy, who's the parent of a 27-year-old disabled child. I see Gail in the audience. I could talk to you about my constituents who have Alzheimer's and the value of having health care and Medicare and having families to be able to take care of their parents and grandparents. So this is one of the reasons that not only this bill, but when I got to Washington and I was on my journey of going there, we also had bills before it was strengthening Social Security. We wanted to make sure that we could also secure it and that we could make sure that people weren't going to take away the service that we've had 76 years. We've had Social Security. And here's the good thing. Anytime you build a strong foundation, you know, it's like your house. Sometimes you add a room on or you tweak it a little bit, but you don't feel the need that you need to tear it down. And so government built that strong foundation that you gave us. And through the years, we've amended and tweaked and made that foundation stronger and better. And that's why I'm sitting here today. That's why I wanted to participate in this roundtable, because I'm about securing the foundation and making it better. I'm not against reform. I'm not against studying things, but I'm against tearing down something when it doesn't need to be torn down. And so that's my message to you. That's the type of representative that you have in Congress advocating for you. And I'm lucky because we have Teresa here who volunteers, and I'm going to take her sign and I'm going to put that sign up in my office and make sure you see it. And to be joined by our city councilman, Herschel Craig, is another honor. So let me thank you for being here. Herschel understands it at the local level. Herschel is someone who's going to be at the state level advocating and fighting. He gets it. He's been in the trenches, but he understands it from a personal note. To have a spouse who's battling with cancer and has been up and down with it, he understands when you need that insurance. He understands it from watching the work that his parents and Linda's parents did. And that's why we need folks like us. He's on a journey just like I was on a journey. And being on this journey, I am sure he's here because he too is making a commitment to Social Security and to Medicare and protecting our system. So I thank you. I know we're going to continue the dialogue, but I wanted to just share with you that you have a supporter in Washington, and by now you also know that I'm not afraid to talk. So let me give you another commitment. Going to Congress has just been a wonderful experience for me. And I don't want to make light of the problems and the issues that we have, but I consider myself a bridge builder, someone who's not afraid to go on the other side of the aisle and talk about the issues and hopefully extend an arm. I mean, when you talked about the early years in Congress, I think we can learn a lot from the early years, and that's why they have things called stories, and that's why they have pioneers, and that's why we need to build from that. So I want to be one of those individuals that when people look back at my legacy, they can say she was fearless, she fought for the people, but she also understood you can't do things by yourself.
Right.
And when you work together on both sides of the aisle and you come out with a victory, it's a better victory for the people, because I can guarantee you one thing. I was a hospital administrator. You walk into that hospital sick and wanting your Medicare, there's not a question they're going to ask you if you're a Democrat or a Republican. They're going to ask you your age, they're going to ask you where you live, they're going to ask you Social Security, they're going to ask you a whole lot of other personal questions. But no one is going to ask you your political status. So when it comes to fighting for something that's going to save a Democrat as soon as it's going to save a Republican or an African American and a non-African American, a male or a female, we need to get our act together in Congress and work together for the lives of all people. And that's another reason why I'm